All right, welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today.
Into discipline.
Yeah, discipline strategy.
Productive ones at that.
You know, we always say we've got great research.
We do.
We got a lot of expert opinions to kind of help us all rethink things a little bit
Yeah.
and move beyond just punishment,
Right.
the old school,
The old ways.
and see discipline,
As a teaching moment.
Yeah, as a teaching tool.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at the fundamentals,
Mm-hmm.
how positive discipline is different
Yes.
from traditional punishment, and then get into some
Practical.
practical examples
Yep.
of non-punitive techniques.
Absolutely.
And then, of course,
How it changes as kids grow.
how does discipline evolve as
Oh.
children grow? And then,
How to avoid those common pitfalls.
how to not fall into those,
The traps.
the traps, the pitfalls.
Exactly.
You ready?
Okay, let's go.
So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
What do we even mean when we say effective discipline?
Well, it's not just about, laying down the law.
Right.
It's really more about, think of it as guiding children toward positive behavior.
Okay.
We're really trying to help them develop their own self-control and responsibility, not just reacting to when they misbehave.
Right. Because I think
Yeah.
that's where, we think of discipline, we think of, oh, they did something wrong.
Exactly.
Now I have to discipline them.
Right. It's a reaction.
But you're saying it's more,
It's more proactive.
it's like
It's about teaching.
setting them up.
Yeah, setting them up for success.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we've got some research here on
Yes.
the impacts of harsh discipline.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
It is. It's pretty intense.
It is.
Yeah.
But, a lot of research shows that these,
Like yelling?
yelling, or physical discipline
Right.
can lead to some
Negative.
negative outcomes for kids, like increased anxiety and aggression
Yeah.
and low self-esteem.
Yeah. So it's almost like,
Yes.
it can have the opposite effect
Right. You think
of
that
what you're trying to do.
you're trying to correct the behavior,
Right.
but actually you might be,
Reinforcing.
reinforcing it or even creating new problems.
We've got this research. It's fascinating. You should definitely check it out.
Yeah, and there's even, Dr. Murray Strauss's work.
Oh, yeah.
He linked harsh discipline to increased criminal behavior
Whoa.
later in life. Yeah.
That's pretty powerful stuff.
It is. It really makes you think.
Yeah. It makes you rethink like how you're approaching things.
For sure.
So if we're not, going to those
Right.
tactics,
Yeah.
where do we even begin?
Well, I think, communication is key.
Okay.
Like before we can even address a behavior,
Yeah.
We really need to understand what's driving it.
So like sometimes a tantrum isn't just a tantrum.
Exactly. A child might be acting out
Yeah.
because they're hungry
Oh, right.
or tired or they've just had too much stimulation
Yeah.
or they're struggling to communicate what they need.
Oh, interesting.
So we got to look beyond just the behavior that we see
Yeah.
and really try to figure out what's causing it.
The why.
The why, exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
So then how does positive discipline
right.
fit into all of this?
Well, I think it gives us a framework,
Okay.
for teaching those desired behaviors.
Okay.
It's about setting those clear expectations,
Hmm.
encouraging them,
Yeah.
using logical consequences to help kids learn.
So instead of just reacting, you're
Right.
saying it's more like,
It's more proactive.
yeah,
Like
you're teaching them.
teaching them how to make good choices.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, what does that look like?
Right.
Can you give me an example?
Well, redirection's a great place to start. If a child is getting really frustrated with a toy,
Yeah.
offer them a different one.
Huh.
Just kind of shift their focus
Yeah.
before things have a chance to escalate.
Okay. Simple. But I can see how that would work.
It can be really effective
Yeah.
sometimes.
So what about natural consequences, though?
Oh, natural
Because
consequences.
that always feels a little.
I know. It can be tricky,
Yeah.
but it can also be so powerful.
Okay.
The key is, you want to make sure that the consequences
Yeah.
are directly related to the action
Right.
and that they're safe.
Right. Of course. Safe.
Of course,
Yeah.
yeah. So, like if a child refuses to wear a jacket
Okay.
on a cold day,
Yeah.
they might get cold.
Right.
That's the natural consequence.
So they learn, but not because we're
Right. You don't have to lecture.
lecturing them. Yeah.
No, it's just, it happens naturally.
They learn.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can apply that to other things too, like forgetting their homework or not cleaning up their toys.
Okay.
The natural consequences help them learn responsibility.
Yeah. Experience is the best teacher.
Exactly. That's the saying.
Right. And, we were talking about time-ins before
Right.
as opposed to timeouts.
Yeah, timings.
So can you explain a little more about that?
Yeah, so instead of isolating the child, right?
Right.
You're giving them a safe space
Okay.
to regulate their emotions,
Yeah.
hopefully with your support.
Right. So you're there with them.
Exactly.
You're not just sending them away.
Right. It's not about punishment.
Okay.
It's about helping them learn how to calm down
Yeah.
and process those big feelings.
Okay.
It's all about creating that supportive environment
Yeah.
where they can learn to manage themselves.
So I've got redirection, natural consequences, and time ends. Those are all great tools.
Yeah.
But I imagine consistency is key, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like we can't just, do it once and expect it to work.
No. Children need predictability.
Right.
If the rules are always changing
Yeah.
and expectations are inconsistent,
All right.
it just creates confusion for them.
Right. So it sounds like it's not just being consistent with the rules, but it's also being consistent in how we're responding.
Exactly. You want to stay calm.
Yeah. Stay calm.
And consistent, even when,
Even when it's hard.
it's hard. Yeah.
Right. Like even when your toddler's decided to paint the dog with peanut butter.
Right. Exactly.
But I'm really fascinated with this idea of how,
Yeah.
we have to adapt our discipline
Absolutely.
as kids grow.
It's a process. They develop cognitively, they mature emotionally. Our strategies should change too.
Okay.
So as they get older, we can involve them more
Okay.
in setting limits and consequences,
Oh, I see.
which really helps them,
Feel ownership.
take ownership of their choices.
Okay, so it's less about us dictating and more about collaborating.
It's about guiding them
Yeah.
to be independent
Right.
and make responsible decisions.
Okay, so before we wrap up,
Yes.
any final words of wisdom?
I just want to say
Yeah.
effective discipline.
Yeah.
It's not about being perfect.
Okay.
It's about progress.
Okay.
You're going to make mistakes.
Yeah, we all do.
We all do. That's part of it.
Yeah.
The key is to keep learning,
Yeah.
keep adapting, and most importantly, keep building that strong, loving connection with your kid.
Because that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, so well said. It's a journey, not a destination.
Exactly.
And for everyone listening, I'll leave you with this.
Okay.
How can understanding your own childhood experiences with discipline
Oh, interesting.
help shape your approach as a parent? Something to think about.
For sure.
And
Yeah.
keep exploring the world of positive discipline.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of great resources out there
There.
to support you every step of the way.
You got this.
You got this.
We're all in this together.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.